Talented Julia rocks out to the bumper music, and I think she's just trying to get her heart started, get some circulation going. That's what it is. We had that drug company commercial a while ago played using Low Rider for their theme music, and every time I hear Low Rider, I think of summertime in Ocean City. Absolutely, cruising Ocean Highway, and and the top down, and listening to War do Low Rider. Anyway, we got Barry Donadio on the line with us. Barry from Public Security LLC. Barry is, I would say, our regional expert on the Middle East. He spends a lot of time doing conversations with the Middle Eastern media. I don't know how they found you, Barry, but it's turned out to be a great resource for us because you based on what the media is asking you, you can get an idea of what these various media outlets are telling their people. I think you would agree with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is spin on agendas over there, just like in politics here in media, fake news, if you will. It's over there, too.
Yeah, and it's amazing, the amount of credibility that we've seen the mainstream media lose. I mean, I gave up on CBS when Dan Rather got caught lying about Bush, and was it Martha Raddatz was on with J.D. Vance when they were talking about the gangs taking over apartment complexes in Colorado Springs. And she said, well, it was only a few apartment complexes. It was isolated. And J.D. looked at her and said, do you hear what you're saying? How would you, and I wish he'd gone on to say something like, how would you like to be a resident in that apartment complex, to hear you basically pass it off? And what that tells me is, and it's true with a lot of the major alphabet networks, is these national correspondents are making humongous amounts of money, okay? And because of that, their egos get to them, and they truly believe that they are smarter than the average person, and they need to tell us what we need to think. And that tends to be the general trend of what is so-called journalism these days. I think you would agree with that, and I'm sure you're seeing examples of that dealing with these foreign journalists.
Right. So propaganda, I think many people in power have learned that more powerful than any artillery piece or any rifle or any machine gun is the power of the words or power of persuasion. They can never fire a shot. If they can persuade 1 million people to think a certain way based on an agenda they're pushing, that's extremely powerful. Yes, and we have tools like the internet now that they didn't have. Internet and in a second we can push a button and have access to the world. That's the danger.
Well, and that gets us into the whole conversation, which we're not going to do today, about how I mentioned this earlier about how it's getting very hard for the human race to keep up with their technology advances. And with AI coming online, it's going to get even harder to do. And there's been debates about artificial intelligence going back to when I was in high school and reading Isaac Asimov's science fiction books. He's the man that wrote I, Robot, which Will Smith destroyed in the movie. It was nothing like the novel. But, he was talking then about being concerned about, robots getting too smart for their own good and what we needed to do to curtail that. He put out, I think it was the 3 basic rules of robots. And one of them was that a robot could never, through action or inaction, cause harm to a human being. And this is something that has to be worked into their software. The biggest problem is our enemies don't have to abide by that. Barry, let's get back to what's going on. There's a lot of debate going on both in the general public and in Congress on whether or not the U.S. should go ahead and drop that big bomb or not. What kind of feeling are you getting from the Middle Eastern media that you're talking to about whether or not he should go in?
Well, Middle Eastern media in general don't want United States military forces really in the region, because of the sensitivities with culture. And, we were there in Iraq for 20 years in Afghanistan. So I would say the Middle East, with the exception of Israel, and we have a great ally in Jordan. Saudis are our allies as well, but they would be more reserved to say, oh, yeah, you guys should go into Iran. We have Qatar and United Arab Emirates all support us. Really, Iran is surrounded by,
they're pretty much alone.
Really.
Yeah, they're pretty much alone.
They're pretty much alone, yes, with the exception of Russia. But, the bigger piece for your listeners that we have to look at, there's a big giant piece of this whole thing and this air campaign, which I believe is going to occur here. We know that Iran has been selling Russia their Shahed drones, which have been very effective in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So look at this at the big picture. We're having big trouble with Russia, right? And China hasn't even entered into what could be a bigger war in Europe. And North Korea just sent another 6,000 troops to Europe. When has there been North Korean troops in Europe in human history? Never. So this could be a bigger, broader war that's going to happen. And now, if we go in, we take down the regime of Iran, that's one less member of the Axis that we have to fight if this turns into a global conflict.
Well, one of the things that's interesting here is we've been taking out their ability to make weapons. Okay, they're taking out the drones and the rocket factories. Okay, then after what you say, that ties into the fact that Putin's been depending on the Iranians to supply him with weapons of war. Okay, that supply now is pretty much cut off, I would think. All right, and like I said, Putin is a fanatic, but he's not stupid. Okay, and I really, I don't think he wants to see the demise of the Russia, of Russia. Whereas, like we said before, the Ayatollah, he'd be more than willing to go meet his maker and his 72 virgins and take the whole country with him. That's what's really the big difference there. I don't think that Russia would get involved if the U.S. went in. I really don't. They've got enough trouble in Ukraine right now.
Yeah, they just can't. Logistically, they can't get there. I mean, they can certainly send like a paratrooper unit in there, maybe to try to rescue the Ayatollah and get him out of there. But the Ayatollah can rescue himself. But I think this is a doomsday for them. I think if you're a member of the inner circle of the Iranian supreme leader, this is like the end of the world for you. And, if they have a nuclear weapon, they will push that button. But this is so complex. Israel, the United States, they got to get in there. They have to level all the military industry, all the military bases, all the missiles. And another thing, this nuclear facility that they're all talking about that only the Americans can destroy. Listen, it's not going to be just one bomb that's going to take that out. They're going to need like 30 of those big bombs. It's not just, imagine blowing up a mountain. A mountain itself, bedrock. It's not just going to go away with one drop of a bomb.
But
supposedly is like
if they bury it,
quarter of a mile underground.
Yeah, but if they collapse it, just bury it. It would take.
You hope. We hope. But I think everybody's saying on the news, the U.S. will just go there and they're going to use a stealth bomber and drop this one bomb and everything's going to be fine.
No.
I don't think so. I think it's going to take about 30 of those things. This is a big, huge complex, a big mountain. Who knows how are they even going to be able to prove it falls in on itself right away?
I would agree with you, Barry, that it's going to take more than one. Some of the experts are saying it might take 3 or 4. But we'll see. In other words, we know that it's going to take more than one to make it happen, either to collapse it or totally destroy it. I want to thank you. We're just about out of time this morning. Barry, thanks for joining us. Folks want more information on you. They can look